Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Rich from the Hard Compound. We are back live again. This is a continuation of the Hard Compound's birthday celebrations. For those of you who have just started following the page, hello, welcome. Thank you very much. And this is the seventh or eighth interview we've done. We've spoken to some guys from the British Touring Car Championship, past and present. Rob Gravitt, Michael Crease, Jade Edwards, Ollie Jackson's come on a couple of times as well. We've also spoken to Rob Gravitt's son, Bradley. We've spoken to some guys from the UK Mini Challenge, Ryan Falconbridge and Alex Neville. And most recently, we spoke with Ari Lyondike, the double Indy 500 winner, which was very exciting. But tonight, we are continuing the celebrations with another fantastic guest. We have got our first former Formula One driver who's going to be joining us very shortly. And he's also won the 24 Hours of Le Mans, a BTCC race winner and a team founder as well. So this is going to be a really excellent one. Any questions you have, type them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer. But I can see that he's ready. So I'm going to bring him in, and this is Derek Warwick.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Derek, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. Yeah, it's nice to be here. Anytime you want to talk about motor racing, I'm up for that. I've got a full glass of wine, so I'm ready for all the embarrassing questions you might ask. Well,
we'll try and limit the embarrassing ones, but we'll see how we get on. As I say, we've got a couple of questions that have popped up previously, so yeah, we'll see how we go. Firstly, thank you very much for coming on. Very much appreciated.
Pleasure.
As you'll know, it's Hard Compound's first birthday celebrations, so you're part of the celebration. So thank you very much for coming on. It's great to have an ex-F1 driver and a Le Mans winner on.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, excellent. So just for starters, how's lockdown been treating you, and how's it affected? Because obviously you've got your business interest as well. Has it been affected at all?
Well, obviously it was difficult during lockdown because it literally was lockdown and we were doing no business. And when you're not doing no business, you're obviously earning no money. But I'm one of the luckiest people in the world because I live in a little island called Jersey in the Channel Islands. And when we were allowed out for an hour or 2 hours walking the dog, we could walk along the coast, along the seabed, and it was just amazing. The weather was brilliant, so I can't complain too much. Not when I think about some of the poor people that live in blocks of flats and was locked down in those sort of rooms. I think that must have been pretty hard. So you know, I feel very privileged to live in Jersey in the Channel Islands, and I have to say it was relatively easy because I could still get into the garage because we were still servicing all the essentially employed, like the firemen, the police, nurses, doctors. We gave a lot of cars to various people that couldn't get around because they were using buses or bikes or whatever. So we did our little bit for community, and I feel very humbled by how much work a lot of people do out there.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of amazing people out there that have either really struggled through lockdown or have eased the struggling for some with the amazing work they do, the NHS and all the medical staff and all that. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. Well, I'm glad to hear that all's been well. That's excellent. So if we can crack on, if we may, can we begin at the beginning? Where did you first get into motorsport, and how did that come about? Was it a family situation that sort of drew you in, or was it?
Very much, really. We didn't come from a privileged family. We had a company called Warwick Trailers. It was owned by my father and uncle, and it was quite a nice balance because my father was a typical father that cared for his son, looked after him, and was quite conservative, and was quite happy for him to run the family business and do a bit of stock car racing. On the other side, I had a complete mad uncle who flew airplanes, helicopters, aerobatics, excuse me, won the King's Cup Air Race in '73. So I kind of had two fathers that sort of pushed me along doing things. And they were always into karting. Then they started on the short ovals doing what we call super stocks, Formula 2 super stocks. I used to do mechanicing for them. And then when I was 15, I forged my birth certificate because you had to be 16. And I still got the birth certificate. It was a big smudge and a 6 instead of a 5. So it was very, very cleverly done. And I just raced with my uncle and my father. So you got 3 Warwicks in a race. You didn't really want to upset them because we would gang up and sort you out. So racing's always been in our blood. Cars, cranes, drots, forklifts have always been in our blood. And we had a massive field beside Warwick trailers. We would just go to a scrapyard and pick up 2 or 3 cars and bring them back to the field. And I just go round and round and round and round, trying to get the thing on 2 wheels, just doing all sorts of things. So just driving was just a massive, massive part of my life from when I could almost walk.
No, excellent. It's nice to have that sort of ingrained almost early on. It's sort of maybe not a predefined path, but certainly certainly something to be surrounded by, which is excellent.
Yeah, but also lucky as well. I mean, lucky to have such a diverse 2 people bringing me up. And I can see bits of my Uncle Stan in me, which I'm not always proud of, but a lot of my father, a lot of his principles, a lot of what he stands for. And so, yeah, very privileged and very honoured to be brought up through the Warwick family, that's for sure.
Excellent, excellent. I've just seen a comment that's popped up on the little list there from Mark Wagstaff. He actually runs a little business called BTCC Blueprints, which is excellent. Loads of merchandise for the British Touring Car Championship, which we'll come to later. And he's just said, I've just been chatting to a good friend of mine, Pedro Felipe, I believe that's pronounced, who's on a tiny island out in the Atlantic called Falal in the Azores, and he says that you were a very underrated driver who he liked a lot. And Pedro is a true F1 nut, so it must be true.
Okay. Well, you know, I think it's one of those things that you never know just how good you are until you're in a situation where you can prove yourself. And I was lucky in sports cars. I always drove the best cars, but not always in Formula One. So there's one thing that I always thought that I was good enough to compete with the best. But there's another thing doing it, you know, and until you do it, you can't really judge whether you were good enough.
No, sure. Another one that's just popped up, Chris Cuthbert. We actually do some promo work for his son Ty. He's an excellent young kart racer, aged 11, I believe. Do correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. He said, "Did you ever go karting, or was it straight from the super stocks? Was it straight into there?"
No, I did karting when I was 12. I won the Southern Area Championship in my first year, but we just ran out of money, and it wasn't something we could do. It was very tricky. We only had one circuit down in Southampton, and obviously that was 100 years ago, and it wasn't something that we could afford to do. Whereas with Formula 2 stock cars, we built our own chassis. My uncle built the engines, and we were competitive straight away. So it was something that, and the fact that we could do it as a family, you know, we would all go there, and it was a bit rough and tumble, but it was something that I really, really liked, and it was something that I think fine-tuned me as a driver, because if you've only got 2 corners and 2 straights, getting the most out of that situation, setting the car up, feeling the car, it just gave you that ultimate feel for later on in time when we were doing obviously circuit racing, Formula 4, Formula 3, and so on.
Oh, excellent. That's good. Yeah, good to hear. So how did the move into single seaters come about? Was it through the success in the super stocks, or was it like knowing people or putting yourself out there and trying to push it in that direction? How did it all happen?
Uncle Stan. I mean, you're going to hear Uncle Stan many, many times this evening. Yeah. He was flying his plane out of Thruxton. We come from Hampshire, Horsford, very near Winchester, and we won the World Championship. We won the British Championship, English Championship at 17. And we were kind of getting a bit stale, actually. And then get my times right here, in 74, he said, why don't you come over to Thruxton? There's some Formula Ford going on. And there's a guy called Jeff Lees that seems to be winning everything. Why don't you come and have a look? And we went over there and we were smitten by it. I mean, when you see, chrome front suspension, independent with adjustable shock absorbers and Hewling gearbox with independent rear end, and then you compare that to the kind of cars that we were racing, I mean, it was just like going to heaven. So we watched it, we looked at it. There was a racing car show the end of 74. My father wouldn't go. He was absolutely against it. We weren't financially in the place to even start it, really. But Uncle Stan being Uncle Stan, just jumped in the car and we all went up to the racing car show. We kind of hooked onto Hawk, Mr. Lazenby, and he offered me a deal to race a Hawk DL12. And I just thought, wow, this would just be amazing. So we came back, tried to convince father to buy into it. Absolutely not. We forged, or we made up a budget to say that it was going to cost X instead of Y. I convinced Dad to come up. We went back up there the next day, knowing full well that if I get Dad into the room and he saw these amazing pieces of art, he would do it. And that's how we did it. We bought the DL12, which was a bit of a shitbox, really, but it got me into where it was. It got me into Hawk. And midway through, or the end of that year, he came out with that Hawk DL15 that we raced, and then went on to win, 33 races in 76. So, wow. And all of a sudden, I was trying to do Super Stocks and Formula Ford, but Formula Ford just took over. We had a lot to learn, changing gear, which you don't do on the short ovals, all that sort of stuff. So we were still running it off the back of a trailer. My mechanics was a diesel mechanic and a carpenter. The only person that could change gear ratios was myself. So we really started from the bottom, but it got us into circuit racing. And we straight away not straight away, the second year in Formula Ford, we just had a lot of success and won a lot of races and competed in a lot of races, and I really, really loved it. It was just a great time in my life.
Oh, fantastic. I guess without all the complications that came later, I suppose, with the wider world of F1. Just seen a couple of things pop up regarding F1 and teammates and stuff from Andy Bristow and what we got here from Robert and Dave. We've got a few things that have come up. We're going to touch on those later as we move on, so don't worry, guys. I haven't forgotten you. So Formula Ford, and then the move up to Formula 3, which culminated, correct me if I'm wrong, in the British F3 Championship in 78?
Yeah, well, again, at the end of 76, we were lucky. We only had one accident basically all year. I think we entered 63 races and won 33 or something, and won the European Championship. I tried to do too much, otherwise I would have won maybe a few more championships. But anyway, that's history. But then the next step was Formula 3. We got Les Thacker from BP interested, and he gave us a little bit of money. Again, we had to lie to father to convince him to go Formula 3. And it was no. It was absolutely no. We were flat out busy with Warwick Trailers. And one of our salesmen came and said, look, somebody from Saudi Arabia wanted 6 what we call bow trailers. And let's say they were 500 quid a piece. And he came to us and he said that to quote for him, we said, absolutely no way, we're too busy. He said, well, look, just throw a number at me and I'll go back with a number. And we went back with a number like £3,000 a trailer or something. And they said yes. So we did a deal between father, uncle, myself, and my mates who were obviously mechanics. And we built them out of time at nights We built these 6 trailers and sent them off to Saudi Arabia. And on the back of that, we went Formula 3 racing. So that's what made the decision, really. And Lazenby introduced me to Chevron, and we bought the BT38, which was a great car, but it wasn't an RT1 route. And during that year, it was obvious that the people like Brabham that were just absolutely flying in the RT1. And we went and saw, bloody hell, mine's gone. Anyway, we're down to route, and we bought one, and we finished the season with 7 second places, not a win, but came out in 78 absolutely flying. Won the first 5 races against PK, Chico Sierra, De Cesres, Lammers, all those guys, David Kennedy, and we were really on a roll. But then we made the biggest mistake. We almost signed to drive Formula One with McLaren, with Sparshot. He ran a privateer McLaren MP23 or something. We didn't sign because we wanted to sort of have a bit more success. At the same time, Chico Sierra was getting pole positions with the March 783. I mistakenly went and saw Robin Hurd, and he gave me a car. But we started to run it, but we never really got on top of it. We lost our momentum. PK started winning races, and the rest is history. It was a big mistake. I think we could have gone on and won both championships, whereas Nelson won the BP championship and I won the Vandervelde championship. But, we ran that year on just under 20 grand. When we sold everything, we spent £20,000. So, Nelson reportedly spent over 75 grand. So, we did a good job, but of course you don't get any bonus points for doing it on the cheap. So, that was it. So that was Formula 3.
Oh, okay. Right. No, I didn't realise there was those sort of figures involved with the budget. That was amazing. Just before we jump into the Formula One side, there's always something that I've always wanted to ask you. This is just me being on the fan side of things. Your helmet design, where did that come from? I'm always interested in this. Obviously the blue with the white and everything. I just wondered, where did that come from? Was it just something that you thought, yeah, that'll do, or was there a story behind it or anything like that?
Almost, actually, because my brother-in-law was a panel beater and sprayer, and I wanted to come up with something different. I'm very patriotic, so I wanted the Union Jacks, and I've always run with 3 Union Jacks on the helmet. The blue is Warwick blue because everything that came out of Warwick trailers was blue. You could have any color as long as it was blue. So that was the color of my helmet. He came up with what we would consider a fairly easy design for him to paint, and it was as simple as that. He came up with a design and painted it. I insisted on having the 3 Union Jacks, and it developed from there, really. And then as we got up the ladder, obviously we got other helmet painters involved, and they sort of tidied it up a little bit. But no, I still run it today. My little brother Paul ran it when he was racing, and now I've got 2 grandsons racing karts. And they run the same colours on their helmet as well. So
fantastic.
We're now keeping the Warwick tradition.
Brilliant. Very pleased to hear it. Excellent. That's made me smile. I like that. Yeah. Lovely. So you mentioned about climbing the ladder. Obviously, the next one up, I believe, was the Formula One move with 81 with Tolman. Am I right in saying?
No, 79 came along, and we ran the 792 March in Formula 2. Again with Formula a bit of BP money. The car was just crap. I mean, it was just impossible to drive. We had no money. We had a Highline sponsor. BP put a bit of money. We finished only one race. We finished 5th, I think, in one race. My season was over. My racing career was over at the end of 79. But Les Thacker from BP come and said, right, okay, if we were to run a big promotion with BP VF7, and we want to run Formula 2 and we want to win the races and we want to win the championship, what would you do? And I said, there's only one team. It's called Tolman. And the conversation then went on from Tolman and that side of it. And then it all went quiet. And I got pulled up to BP House in London the middle end of December, sat in the reception like a scolded schoolboy, got called up to the 150th floor, whatever it was, went into this room, and in this room was Alex Hawkridge, Ted Tolman, Rory Byrne, Roger Silman, and everybody from Tolman, to tell me that they're running an all-British team with me and Stephen South, and we're going for the Formula 2 Championship. They're going to build their own chassis, going to run a Hart engine, and that's where we went in 1980. Unfortunately, Stephen made a couple of mistakes and got kicked out the team, and they brought in Mr. Aggressive, Mr. Nasty, Brian Henton, and so I raced in 1980 with Brian Henton.
Right. Yes. So yeah, it was actually weird. I was actually watching on Sky Sports last night. It was the classic F1. It was the Las Vegas Grand Prix in '81, which I believe was and your name came up. I was like, ooh, right. And
well, it was the only race I qualified in '81, so I remember it very well.
I wasn't going to say it was the only one, but that's fine. No, that was so that's where that all started, and you obviously remained with Tom, and the car sort of seemed to be getting better and better right up through. Oh crikey, trying to rack my brain now. Up towards '83, was it, with Tolman? And then
we took the same design from Formula 2 into Formula 1, and it was completely wrong. Rory Byrne, bless him, got it completely wrong. The car was really shite, and Brian Henton qualified at Monza, and I qualified at Las Vegas. But at the end of that year, they kept me. And then came Tio Fabi for '82. The car was no better. We almost lost money. We almost lost a sponsor rather. And then at Brands Hatch in '82, we cheated a little bit. We ran the car on half tanks to try and get some performance. And we came through the grid in the race, passing Peroni and the Ferrari for second place. So it was a great race. Wow. And it really put ourselves in the right way. And then '83, the car was magic. The car, a bit unreliable. I was the only driver to finish in the points in the last 4 races. And then obviously at the end of '83, I was talking to Renault, and I replaced Prost at Renault for '84 and '85.
Well, yeah, that was going to be the next question. How did that move to Renault come about? And obviously replacing Prost, obviously, incredibly successful since, he went to McLaren and did all manner of good things. How did that move to Renault come about? Did they say, oh, we like the look of this Derek Warwick chap, or
well, at the end of '83, like I say, we finished in the points all 4 races. We started speaking the end of, the sort of middle end of '83. Gerard Larousse come and said, would I be interested? I thought, are you serious? And of course, I'm interested. And just to correct one thing there, replacing Alain Prost is absolute bullshit, because you don't replace somebody like Alain Prost. He's way up there. But
you kind of fill the seat.
Yeah, I fill the seat, because they'd fallen out big time. They didn't reach the level that Prost wanted, and he moved on, or they moved him out. I can't remember. So anyway, Larousse came and started talking. And you've got to remember that in '80 in Formula 2, '81, '82, '83 with Tolman, I was earning peanuts. I mean, just enough to live on, just enough to travel on. But the one thing I did that was very clever, I think, was I followed people like Nicky Lauda and what he was doing and how he was preparing for races, etc., etc. And he always had his own personal trainer from Villydungal. And even though I couldn't afford it, one of the first things I did for even in Tolman was to get my own trainer from Villydungal. And he come along. Anyway, getting back to La Rousse, I was earning next to nothing in 81, 2, 3. And we started talking money, and it completely blindsided me. I had no idea that you could earn that kind of money. So obviously, I've always been a good poker player. I've always been a good negotiator. And anyway, we kept on negotiating backwards and forwards, and I knew then it was serious. I knew the other driver was going to be Patrick Tambay, so they had a French driver. So they quite liked having an English driver as well, or a British driver rather. Then the end of 83, me and my drunken mates went up to London to the car show and waiting for a phone call from La Rousse. And then eventually my father called and said, are you sat down? I said, don't mess around, Dad, what's going on? He said, trust me, sit down. I said, okay, I'm sat down. He said, I've just had a telex. That's how contracts were signed.
Wow.
I just had a telex from Renault and Gerard Larousse saying that the sign-on money is X, and you are now officially a Renault driver for 1984. So,
Wow.
I mean, I still remember. Well, actually, I don't remember because I got so drunk that night, or we all got drunk that night, just celebrating, and it really put me onto another level. It was just amazing to drive for. It was sad to leave Tolman, very sad to leave Tolman, because for 4 years we've been a really tight-knit little professional team. But the opportunity of Renault was obviously too much.
Well, of course, yeah. Just a huge name in the automotive world, let alone F1. So, yeah, and obviously quite a lucrative move as well, which is always very nice. So obviously, there's a very obvious sort of question coming up with the Renault, and it involves Williams, and I'm sure you've been over this quite a few times. With I believe it was 85. There was talk of a move to Williams in 85, and you remained at Renault, and I believe certain Mr. Mansell got the seat at Williams. What kind of happened there? I wasn't quite intrigued with what went on with that sort of move / not move.
Well, I never had a manager. I negotiated all the stuff myself. Driving for Renault was amazing. There was lots of promises going on by mid-year. The car was unreliable, blowing a lot of turbos and a lot of diffs. But Larousse promised me that a lot of things were going to change. He renegotiated my contract upwards, as you can imagine, for 85. By that time, I had a very loose conversation with Ferrari, but it was nothing really. But I was also talking with Williams. We never got to talk about money or anything like that because I was really only using Williams as a foil to get more money from Renault, because I had decided that I wanted to stay with Renault. It didn't look like Williams was doing much in 84. And I didn't think it was the right move for me. I'll be honest with you. I thought staying with Renault was right. With hindsight, you could argue that obviously Nigel signed for Williams for 85, and the 85 car from Renault was shite. It was absolute rubbish. We lost all our top guys, Mijou, the aerodynamicist, Tetu, our chief engineer, Larousse. All of them went and set up his own team, which left us with a box full of nothing. And the car was just very average, and that really was how 85 came about. And then it was a so-so season in 85, still competitive against Tambay, which is the only person I can judge myself against. And then Lotus came along and offered me a drive for 86 with Senna. And if you like that, the rest of that is history as well.
Yes. Again, that's the next bit on the timeline. Is obviously everyone knows Ayrton Senna. And correct if I'm wrong. I've just read various bits and pieces through the years about this whole situation. There's two sides that I've heard from the Ayrton Senna thing. One was that he saw you as a genuine threat to his #1 status at Lotus, and another side was possibly also true, was that he didn't think Lotus could sustain 2 #1 drivers, and he almost talked the team out of taking you on. Do you know what went on for sure, or?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know 100%, of course, because it was explained to me at the time as well.
Okay.
Ayrton had signed as #1 driver. He wanted to be #1 driver, not signed as #1. I then came up there. We started negotiating. I signed as equal #1 to Ayrton. Alternate use of the spare car. We had spare cars in them days. And I had first pick of mechanics. And so that was all right. The money wasn't brilliant, but it was a good step for me to go against Ayrton, who at that time was starting to be the genius, the legend that he became. So I was quite excited by driving with Ayrton. Never spoke to him. Obviously, he was negotiating his contract or whatever. And then in December, I got a phone call from Lotus to come up to the factory, and that was it really. Just come up to the factory. So I thought I was coming up to. I'd signed my part of the contract, but they hadn't signed theirs. But everything was agreed by message. Everything was agreed. And I got up there, and right in front of me, Fred Bushell tore the contract up. And I said, what the fuck's going on? And he said, I'm sorry, Derek, he said, but we're under enormous pressure from the sponsors. Ayrton has gone back and put pressure on the sponsors to get rid of me. And I think, well, I don't think, I know, Ayrton knew deep down that Lotus probably wasn't good enough to run 2 #1 drivers. And
Right.
being the super selfish person that most racing drivers are, including myself, I think he took it to another step. He believed that he should be #1. He believed that he should have the spare car. He didn't want Derek Warwick, who he knew was quick, and going into a British team could take the focus off of him and keep it on and put it back onto me.
Right.
And quite rightly, for his career, for everything, it was right. For me, it was an absolute disaster because all the drives had gone. It was December 85. So I ended up without a contract for 86. But I did receive a really nice card from Ayrton wishing me all the best for the 86 season. Because I genuinely think he had no idea that he had just screwed my career over. I think he was just so focused on Ayrton, which I bear no grudge at all, that he did what was best for Ayrton. And I think that's what we see with super people, with legends of our sports, and I use legends very carefully. But he clearly was a legend. He's a legend in my mind still. But for him, it was just a natural thing to do. He was absolutely slaughtered in the press, but he didn't care. He did his talking on the track, as we all know, and he became arguably one of the greatest drivers ever to drive a Formula One car.
Yeah, well, for sure. I think, from what I know, which is obviously doesn't even scratch the surface of what you know, but I think Ayrton looked after Ayrton, which is I must say, just see behind me, That's him up there. So he was, alongside, yourself and Nigel and all the other sort of Brits. Ayrton was the guy who sort of really switched me into motor racing in '86. But I've just seen a couple of little things pop up from Robert. He said, looking back at the emphasis Lotus put on Senna and how they struggled after he left, do you think Lotus would have been better keeping with two frontline drivers like yourself and him? Possibly in hindsight, yes, but as you said, it wasn't. It possibly wasn't possible.
It wasn't possible because the team, were financially they weren't in the best state. I don't think. I think that it was clear that they could probably only run one real number one car. They put all their effort into Ayrton and very little into Johnny Dumfries. And Johnny Dumfries suffered because of it, because he did that 1 year and that was it. So that proved right. Maybe it would have been the same for me had I gone there. Gradually, I would have been pushed out as equal number one and been number two. I don't know. Would they have been better off having two drivers like Derek Warwick? No, because Ayrton Senna, as we know, dragged that car along. Good or bad, he made it special. Could I have made it special? I'd like to think I could. Whether I could, a bit like I said earlier on, you never know how good you are until you get the opportunity either against one of the best or in a car that wins. And I can say, to back that up, I've won a lot of races in sports cars. Why? Because I've always driven the best cars. I've not won any races in Formula One. Why? Because I haven't driven some of the best cars. So, it speaks for itself. I've won some very easy races and had some hard 7th, 8th places in Formula One. So, life's a bugger, as they say.
Yes, it can be. Sure. I've just seen a question about today's Formula One drivers. We're going to come on to that a little bit later. Paul Ablett, thank you for the question. So obviously Renault had pulled out at the end of '85. Lotus obviously wasn't happening. You were without a drive. You did. This is where I first came across you. I'm not going to say. Well, I was 5 years old and a big Formula One fan, thanks to my dad. Sorry to bring the age thing in, but I obviously latched on to all the British drivers that year. I think Jonathan Palmer was I believe was in there, Martin Brundle, and obviously Nigel, Johnny Dumfries, and all that. And I got into Formula One at the end of that season after what happened with a Brabham driver that we're going to mention very shortly. So I don't remember the accident that sadly took the life of Mr. De Angelis. But you ended up in the Brabham seat as not as a result, but after what happened. How did that come about? Because I've heard there was a lovely call from Bernie Ecclestone involved.
Well, obviously I was out of Formula One in '86. I went to Daytona and drove a 956. And then I got a phone call from Tom Walkinshaw to drive for Jaguar. And that in itself was a story because, everything that Tom does and teammates with Eddie Cheever is always a big story. So, it was great. We took Jaguar back to Silverstone, won first time out, took it to Le Mans. It was one of the most emotional moments of my life was the parade before the start of the race in front of 100,000, what I thought, British fans. It was just amazing. So a great time to be in sports cars, great cars, etc., etc. But it never really filled the gap that I had in my heart, which was Formula One. And then there was sad news came through about Elio being killed at Ricard. Rear wing fell off, hit the barrier, went over the barrier. And from what I understand, and again, this is rumor as far as I'm concerned, the only injury he sustained in that accident was a broken shoulder. But of course, he inhaled a lot of the fire extinguisher dust that the amateur marshal pumped into the car. And obviously the rest is history. One of the nicest person you will ever meet. He was just the most amazing guy to know, and I had the pleasure to know him. And I have to say that, when I heard that he passed, everything inside me wanted to give Bernie a call, but I just felt it wasn't right. I didn't want to jump into dead man's shoes. I thought it was wrong. I thought there was a period of time that was that gave the dignity, that gave the honor to the man, rather than just claw onto his passing, if you like. And then after about 10 days, Elio was buried. Everything settled down. I still didn't really know what to do. I wanted to give Bernie a call, but I found it was still wrong. And eventually he called me. And he just called me and said, I respect the fact that you didn't jump on the bandwagon. He had calls within 5 minutes of the accident saying, I understand Elio's dead. I'd like to drive for you, from quite a lot of drivers. And like I say, I didn't think that was right. Bernie liked the fact that I didn't do that. Sent his plane over, picked me up, brought me back to Brabham. But like I said at the early part of this interview, or this talk, I'm one of the best negotiators you can find. I'm a good bragger. I know how to play. But in that room with Bernie Ecclestone is another level, let me tell you.
I'm sure, yeah.
Time I was on his plane, I'd worked out that he sent me to come to Brabham. I talked myself into being worth millions and millions and millions of pounds time I got to Brabham. But he cut that in half as I walked through the door, because I said to Bernie, I'm not going to do anything until I look around the factory, look at the car, speak to Gordon Murray, speak to all the mechanics. He said, no, you're not. I said, well, that's what I want to do. He said, well, you better leave then. He said, because you're not. He said, you're not going to go past those doors until you sign the contract. And I said, well, we haven't even spoke money yet. He said, well, I don't need to. He said, because this is the contract. And I said, but, we need to negotiate. No, he said, we're not negotiating. This is the contract. And to be fair to him, he gave me Elio's contract, exactly what Elio was being paid, less 7/16 or whatever it was up until that time. So he was being fair in terms of showing me Elio's contract and telling me that I can have his contract. So I couldn't moan too much. And then we went to the factory, and then you just saw the kind of person that Bernie was. You went into the drawing office and all the blinds were set at 45 degrees because he likes everything. All the mechanics' pockets were sewn up because he didn't like pieces of rag hung out their pockets. So, wow. And just things like that. His attention to detail was just amazing. And it sure was something special driving for the great man.
Oh, that's fantastic. Obviously, from a fan's point of view looking in, wouldn't really necessarily thought that about Bernie, but now you say it, it's kind of obvious that he likes things just so.
Yeah, I think excellent. It wasn't just a matter of getting back into Formula One, because I knew the car was pretty awful, to be honest. But I knew that with Gordon Murray there, and the way that he turns cars around and the way that he was able to win races, etc., etc., I thought he'd do the same to that. The car was absolutely beautiful. But it was a dog, and I think really Gordon had lost a little bit of interest in Formula One and wanted to do other things, and his focus wasn't there, and the car was shite all year, really. I mean, the engine was amazing. I mean, qualifying at Monza, we had, I don't know, almost 1,300 horsepower, and it was just a rocket ship. You could not change gear fast enough. So very, very special. And, it got me back into Formula One. Not at the level I wanted to be, but that was because timing was not right for me.
No, sure. As I say, that was my first memory of you in Formula One. And I think, obviously, when you're 5, Obviously, the Brabham was blue and white. With Ricardo Patrese was teammate, I believe, at the time, and he had a black and white. Sorry, the blue and white crash ram. And you were there with the blue and white. I thought it was team blue and white. It was like that. That was the first thing that sort of sprung into my 5-year-old mind when I first saw it. And then obviously the move to Arrows for the next few years, and that teammate sort of partnership you had with Eddie Cheever, who's obviously went on to win the Indy 500, 98, I believe. That's where I associate you most, in my mind, is with Arrows. That move, did that come around at the end of the 86 season?
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious that I wasn't staying at Brabham. There was not much out there. I'd lost a bit of momentum in terms of my credibility, speed, whatever you want to look at. I started talking to Jackie Oliver. He offered me quite a nice deal. And I signed for him, and stayed there through 87, 8 and 89. The car was quite good. We got Ross Brawn there the middle of 88, and he built that absolutely unbelievable A11 Arrows 89 car. But of course, it was a team that never really had the right budget. We could have done a lot more. Having said that, I think that Jackie Oliver deserves a medal, because he buried his life in that team, and he did everything to try and make sure the team stayed afloat, even though we didn't always have enough money.
No, sure. So I've actually just got a little note here. I mean, I was young, coming up to 8, 9, 10 years old, and I always thought that the Arrows, with you and Eddie Cheever, I always thought that car is almost really, really good. It just seemed to be just not quite on the top level, but it always looked as though it could go really, really well. That's my sort of memory of it.
Yeah, no, the car was good. It was good with Eddie. I mean, we had a sort of a love-hate relationship. We had a lot of fallouts, a lot of big fallouts, and a lot of love-ins. So I was teammate with Eddie for 4 years, 86 with Jaguar, then 87, 8 and 9 at Arrows. So yeah, like I say, we had a lot of fun together. We played a lot of golf together. We drank a lot together. We argued a lot together. We fought a lot together. He was a good guy. He was a good guy, really. We fell out big time, and we both sulked and kissed and made up. And it was just he was a good teammate. Is he my favorite teammate? I liked him as a guy, but there's always a side to Eddie.
Right, fair enough. I can't comment on that at all. I've just seen a little comment that's popped up. Jim Bamber, the Autosport cartoonist, he said that he used to draw the two US F&G Arrows cars together with a heart above their heads as they were in love, because they were always together in races. And that's something I remember as well. I do remember that. It was always like the two Arrows always seemed to be there, you and Eddie. That was great.
Yeah, no, Eddie was quick, I mean, he was in the junior BMW team, and he had a lot of expectation on his shoulders. But I don't think he reached the level he could have done, should have done, simply because he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He would listen too much and take too much notice on what people said or wrote about him, rather than ignore it and just be happy with his lot. But like I say, we got on really well, and we had a lot of fun.
Great, excellent. 1990, moved to Lotus. Finally came about. Obviously, unfortunately, from my memory, the team was on the slip from where it had been previously. Was it the car that you expected when you went to Lotus? And also, obviously, Colin Chapman had sadly passed a few years earlier. And he had a reputation for building very quick cars, but ones that were almost lethal. Was that a concern was it still a concern when you went there, or had things moved on a bit?
No, I think things have moved on. Things have changed. you never thought of that side of it at all. I mean, obviously, we all knew the history of the sport. We all knew the sort of guy that Colin was, and the cars that he built. They built so that they broke on as they took the checker flag, which they quite often did. No, we had a lot of young, good engineers there. The car, it was sort of around the carbon fiber days. The chassis was not strong enough. It just simply was not strong enough. It flexed too much. For example, when we drove the car for the presentation at the start of the season, I was supposed to drive it into this big marquee at Lotus, and the car engine broke out of the back of the car as I turned the corner to drive into the marquee. So we had to back the car back in, put some clamps on the engine to the chassis, and they pushed me in with the engine just blipping. And I should have known then, but the car kept on breaking. It almost killed poor Martin Donnelly. That was a complete chassis failure. And the car was it just flexed. It just wasn't strong enough. It broke on me a couple of times, and it was disappointing because I thought it was a time when I might get my career back into decent cars, but I had a habit of turning left when everybody else was turning right. So I don't regret any of it, but that seems to be the way my career went.
Sure. You mentioned Martin Donnelly there. I don't want to dwell on this for too long because it was an awful thing that happened. I mean, it was my first, again, I was 9 at the time. It was my first experience of, wow, this can go wrong badly. For those of you who are watching who don't know what happened, if you're a bit younger, Martin Donnelly was Derek's teammate at Lotus 1990, and it was at Jerez. I believe it was a high-speed right-hander just behind the pits. And as Derek just said, chassis failure on the car. He hit the barrier. Car broke in half. Martin was, the car was more than broken in half. It was destroyed, and Martin was left in the middle of the track, still strapped in his seat. Brain and lung contusions, I believe, and multiple leg fractures. And everyone almost expected the worst, I believe. But you went out and qualified and did very well. What was the mood that weekend after that happened? It must have been incredibly difficult. And again, I don't want to dwell on this for too long because it was obviously awful. But was it?
I think
very odd.
I think we went to Jerez. Obviously, the car wasn't good, but we'd always try and make the top 10. Then when Martin had his accident, I was in the pits. Which literally was right behind where our garage was. I ran straight out to help him, and I was one of the first there. And I think it was either Nannini or PK that blocked the track so that nobody could hit him because he was right in the middle of the track. And I was there, and when I was there with him, he was dead. I mean, he was blue. For sure, he was gone. But then Prof Watkins got there. Literally beat the shit out of him because normally when Prof gets to a driver that's injured or whatever, he treats him with kid gloves. But he knew he had seconds to save Martin, and to watch him at work was just painful. I walked away knowing full well that he was going to die that evening. Kay went home that evening with my father was there, Uncle Stan was always there, and a few other guys, and we discussed it and we decided I wasn't racing. It was as simple as that. Arrived the next day and there was press everywhere because Martin was still in a coma and he wasn't going to make it. So I went into the garage to announce that I wasn't racing, but saw that all my mechanics had worked all night and put this reinforcing bar on this part of the car that kept breaking. Worked all night, and so I shooed all the journalists, all the team bosses, engineers, everybody, and just had my engineers in there. I just had my mechanics there, and I said, "Look, guys, this is my life we're playing with. Is this safe? Has what you've done, is it okay? Is it safe? Can I race it?" They said, "Derek, 100%. What we've just done will not happen again." it's safe. Whether other parts of the car might break, we all know the sort of issues we've had all year, but that part is good. And I said, right, okay, I'm racing. And my second flying lap through the corner where I saw Martin Donnelly lying was flat. And I have to say, and I don't praise myself very often, even after the accidents I've had at Monza with the Lotus, with the arrows at Hockenheim where I went upside down, that was the bravest moment of my life. And that's what you do. You have 100% confidence in your mechanics. And if your mechanics say yes, it's yes. It's not whether or not the bosses do. It's whether your mechanics, because your mechanics love you and all they want to do is look after you. So, yeah, that was a brave day. That was a very brave day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it doesn't mean much coming from me. I'm just a fan, but absolutely fair play to just go and do it flat. And there's some people wouldn't have done it flat at the best of times, but to do it in that.
Well, my best mate was watching the telemetry, and he said he saw me approaching the corner. He said all I kept on thinking in my mind is lift, 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 lift. He said, and when it was flat, he said he just had tears rolling down his shirt because he was so proud of that moment, But there you go.
Wow. Yeah. And the good thing is Martin is still with us and very much alive and well. So that's the absolutely the most important thing.
We meet up nearly a couple of times a year, but there's about 13 of us that meet up at Christmas, and we have a very boozy Christmas lunch, which Mark Blundell, Martin Brundle, Damon Hill, Johnny Herbert, we all go, all the old boys go, and we have a good time. But I have to say, with Martin Donnelly, I didn't understand him back in 1990. And I still don't understand a word he says now. So, but a lovely guy, absolute lovely guy.
Oh, brilliant! And can I just say that is a table that a lot of people watching would love to be sitting at. That's fantastic.
It's a pretty impressive table, actually.
Yeah, absolutely, very very good. And obviously, there's a lot of people that follow the page are fans of the British Touring Car Championship, so they're very aware of Mark Blundell with what he's doing with his team, which is fantastic. Just very quickly, again, still 1990, the accident at Monza that you mentioned. I asked this to Ari Lyndike a couple of weeks ago, and it's a very silly question because I know what the answer is going to be. None of us sitting here, apart from you, have been going at a very high speed around the parabolica at Monza and got on the edge of the circuit and hit and lost it and gone towards the barrier. What goes through your mind? Because you've got a split second, do you just think this is going to sting, or do you just lose?
I think there's two things. I have never ever been frightened in a race car. Any accident I've had, I've been able to jump straight back in and not think about it at all. I was the first there, cradle Gilles Villeneuve when he was killed in Zolder in '82. So I've seen a lot of deaths in the few years that or the years that I've raced, but it's never put me off. I created very early on in my career a mechanism I used to call a safe, and it was a safe locked in the back of my head. And any tragedy, whether it's family, racetrack, or whatever, I'd put that person in the safe, and I wouldn't on a Thursday morning, and I wouldn't see him until Sunday night. So that was a fail-safe system for me. But I think that when you are around those sort of times, it is quite difficult. But somewhere like Monza, what did I think? I tell you. I've had quite a few accidents, and they're over before they start. But with Monza, you hear about your life flashes before your eyes, and I've always thought that's complete bullshit. But I have to say, it's not. I saw little images of my daughters, my wife, people that mean and matter to me. So something inside me knew it was going to be a big one and knew that it could be the biggest one. But of course it wasn't. I just bounced on my head and ran back and got in the spare car. So, but it goes to show that, those sort of images that you see are bloody true, I tell you.
Right. Wow. I mean, hopefully I'll not be in that situation for a while. But no, amazing. And it must have been quite cool with having the Tifosi all cheering you, and because you just ran back and got in the spare car and cracked on, didn't you? So
when I ran back, I mean, obviously there was a lot of eyes on me. I knew that the race was stopped. I knew I had 15 minutes to get in the spare car. I knew I wanted set 11 put on the car. I knew the car was set up for me. But it wasn't until I drove out onto the circuit that the crowd just went absolute wild that I realized that they thought it was something special, you know.
Brilliant.
And then I got to the grid and I had to do answer some questions to Prof Watkins, which I was just joking about. Answered them all wrong. He got all annoyed with me, got Bernie in the car, and of course that changed the mood quite a bit. So yeah, I think you know, we had to put up with that sort of thing. And I think when you look at Spa last year, when Huber was killed,
yes,
I think it shocked the world of motorsport. I think it shocked a lot of drivers in Formula One because they'd never had to experience racing on from a tragedy.
yeah.
Whereas, you know, the one thing that we did, and the generations before me, much worse, obviously, we had to endure that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Or get out.
Yes. Yeah. Fight or flight type thing. Again, I mean, we spoke via email during the week, and it's something that I will leave up to you how much you want to discuss. Your brother, Paul, obviously he was he lost his life in an accident at Alton Park. I remember it, clearly you do as well. And I just remember him when I was very young as being a very, very good driver. And what happened, and obviously it was incredibly sad. So it's been a long time, but just my personal condolences to you and the family.
Thank you.
That's all.
I don't think he was a very good driver at all. Actually, I think he was. I think he was special. I really do, and it's not a proud brother saying that. It's someone that saw something special in somebody that you knew that would be taking would go a long way. It didn't really happen until he got up into bigger horsepower. Obviously, with Formula 3000 was really where he sat. 5 pole positions, 5 fastest laps, 5 wins, and ended up winning the championship posthumously by a couple of points. And you know, at Donington, when the championship was finally won by him, even the guys he was competing against came up, and they were not just emotionally charged, but they were actually pleased that that Paul won the championship. You know, and I think, you know, when you see that, you just realise just what a great moment. And it was a difficult moment for the family, massively difficult for mum and dad, but also difficult for me because I promised my family that I wouldn't race again because at the time. Then we went to Austria, to what's now called the Red Bull Ring, A1 Ring in my day, and with Jaguar, because I was driving for Jaguar in '91. And the first day went without really too much happening. But right at the end of the day, we tried some different dampers, and one of them broke, and I spun at about 200 mile an hour into the gravel. Got out the car, and I just cried. I cried until 5 o'clock in the morning. And I remember getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and looking in the mirror and saying to myself, right, you've either got to pack your bag, go to the airport and go home, or find a way of getting past this. And that's what I did. I put Paul on a Thursday morning in my safe, in my little, in the back of my head. And so far back sometimes that I couldn't see him. I couldn't remember him. And it wasn't until Sunday, and I always carried pictures of Paul. It wasn't until Sunday that I sometimes would even have to get a picture out to remember who he was. That's how far I put him in the back of my mind. And of course, you know, that's why when we came back, the first race was at Nürburgring in '91. And we ended up having a fight with Schumacher because he didn't acknowledge what was going on, crashed into me, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yes, I've seen a few comments saying, saying that you should have landed one on him.
I couldn't. I couldn't. 'Cause I had about 15 people hung off me at the time. Otherwise, I would have definitely lumped in one. But of course, now I'm so bloody glad I didn't, because it's such a sad situation where we find ourselves with Michael.
Yeah,
I mean, for sure, he's one of the greatest drivers ever. There's no doubt. Was he arrogant? Yes. Was he selfish? Yes. But that's what we've been talking about with Ayrton, the great sportsman of this world. They have to be that kind of person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But getting back to Paul just very quickly, and I'll
Sure.
finish on Paul, just saying that he was special. The accident wasn't his fault. It was a rose joint that broke and jammed the steering. And a bit like Martin Donnelly, the car broke in half, and he ended up strapped still to the back of the car in the spectator enclosure, and died later on going in the helicopter. So it's a pretty violent accident, and it destroyed our family. My mother never got over it, but he was something special. And I think, some of the sadness for me, even now, is I've missed him as a brother, and we got on so well. But also I've missed the fact that he would have done something special in motor racing, and that never really happened.
Yeah. I was going to retract my previous statement when I said he was a very good driver. Obviously, I was quite young at the time, and obviously looking back over the records and everything, and yeah, he was absolutely special. My limited memory of him. So, but yeah, thank you for talking about that.
No worries.
It's only right to acknowledge. Moving quickly on, sports cars, Le Mans, 1992 particularly, when you won. That must have been a pretty amazing feeling. Alongside, it was Mark Blundell, wasn't it? And
Yannick Dalmas.
Yannick Dalmas, yes. That must have been very cool.
Well, very quickly, obviously, 91 I signed for Jaguar, and Osborne came out with that little XJR14. Arguably one of the most beautiful, perfect cars I've ever driven in my life. It was just superb. And then the end of that year, I was a bit disappointed. We should have won the championship. We had Silverstone taken off of us. Otherwise, we would have been champion. Already talking to Jean Todt for Peugeot in 92. And I signed for Peugeot, and the rest is history. We won the World Championship and Le Mans. I love endurance racing. I love my time in sports cars. I love being a part of a team. I love coaxing the most out of your teammate, because normally in Formula One, all you want to do is destroy him. So it's really weird to all of a sudden want to encourage him rather than destroy him. We had a game plan for Le Mans. The sister car just wanted to go fast. They took pole. We were second or something. But we knew what we needed to do to win that race. And we kept to that plan all the way through. I had the option of bringing anybody I wanted into the team for the third driver. And of course, I went to Marky Blundell, and he did a fantastic job. He really did. And we've been, we're massive friends. We talk to each other quite often. He did a good job for us at Le Mans.
No, excellent. Again, he's one of the drivers from my sort of era when I really was into motor racing, and was where I really first got into it. And obviously, when I saw that you and him were competing at Le Mans when I was 11 years old, I was like, oh God, that looks a bit tasty. And it obviously worked out that way. So
one other quick thing. Obviously, my team boss was Jean Todt, president of the FIA, as we know now. And he knew how much Le Mans meant to me. He knew how much winning Le Mans. I wanted to name something in Paul's memory. And he knew this, but never really spoke about it. And with half an hour to go, we brought the car in. Yannick was driving it. And I thought for sure he would finish the race. Frenchman, French race, etc., French team. But he dragged him out and put me in the car to finish the race, because he knew that deep down, that's what I wanted. And deep down, he knew that I probably did more for that team than any of the other drivers. I worked so hard in that team that I think it was his way of thanking me.
That's fantastic. I wasn't aware of that. That's what a fantastic thing to do. Yeah, brilliant. Crikey. Oh, we've gone on for quite a while. I'm gonna just wind things down a little bit because we've been here for over an hour, but which is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to get rid of anyone. Returned to Formula One with footwork. That was just for the 1 year, wasn't it? Just for the 1 year to get back in.
Yeah, end of '92, I got a call from Jim Hall, Pennzoil IndyCar, and I just seen a message pop up there. Jim Val, he was my mechanic.
Oh wow, hello Jim.
Hi Jim, I remember you very well, mate. I saw a clip on some Blue Peters thing or something that we did together. So thanks for being here. I tested at Mid Ohio for 2 days with Jim Hall, thinking I was going to do Indy cars in '93. But at the same time, Eddie Jordan called me and said, "Hold off, I want you to drive for me." And so did Jackie Oliver. So, with my association with Jackie, I went Jackie way. It was footwork. It was a good-looking car. We had the McLaren automatic ride system on it. So it was cool. It was good, and it didn't really materialize how I thought. It was my last year in Formula One. I realized at that time it was time to step down, and that's what we did. But it was great driving for Jackie again in '93.
Lovely stuff. Just seen a couple of ones, a couple of like silly questions pop up. If you had a super stocks front bumper, who would you put in the fence? That's quite a question, isn't it?
What today's drivers, or
I think anyone you've raced against. I think anyone. Would it be Schumacher?
It would have been at Nürburgring, that's for sure.
I would
have definitely put him in the fence. I don't know. To be honest, I think there's a lot of drivers out there that you have fallen out with at various times, but times passed and etc. Yeah. In today's world, it was drivers like, I don't know, bless his soul, Andrea de Cesaris. I mean, he was a pain in the ass. He really was. I might have just strapped the bumper on and put him in the fence, but bless him, he's now passed. He had an accident on a motorbike, but he was good. He was good.
No, great. Last one on the F1 side before we move on to other things. Robert said, "You're on the grid. It's a big race, and you're mentally in the zone. Martin Brundle comes up to chat on his grid walk. What do you do?"
Well, one or two things: grab him by the balls to put him off, or I suppose really you're expecting them to come in at some stage, and although you're focused on the race and everything else, you just accept it as part of the job. I think some of the drivers don't want to do it. Lewis doesn't want to be interviewed on the grid, and I understand that as well. But I was pretty relaxed before the start of a race, so you could all talk to me. At the time I got ready was when I climbed back in the car from the grid. That was when I really put my focus on. Up until then, I was still trying to talk to my engineer, talk to the family, say goodbye and all that sort of stuff, because you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, Marty, he's made such a career out of it. He's without a doubt the best I've ever been with. And when somebody said to me the other day about the fastest ever driver you drove with, Martin Brundle, I don't even have to think about it. He was super quick. He was on my pace all the time. He was a pain in the ass when we drove against him in Jaguar. He was good. And really, when I watch Formula One now, who do I listen to? Martin Brundle. He asks the proper questions, and he's got the respect of the whole Formula One eternity. I
mean, from a fan's point of view, obviously, who's from the era that got into it. And I've always said, you know, when Martin Brundle talks, you know, people should listen, because what he doesn't know isn't worth knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent. That's from my
He's
side of things.
He's a good drinker as well.
No, that'd be a sight to see. Just a quick one. Obviously, you've had some amazing teammates. I've just got a little list here. We mentioned like Teo Fabi, Patrick Tambay, Riccardo Patrese, Eddie Cheever, Martin Donnelly, Johnny Herbert, even a Yuri Suzuki, very underrated driver, I always thought. Then you've got Jean-Louis Schlesser, Andy Wallace, Yannick Dalmas, Mark Landau, Mario Andretti you drove alongside as well. Tarquini, Lammers. I mean, that's some pretty cool people to have driven alongside, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, when you know how good or how quick you were against a lot of those drivers that we all rate very highly, it kind of gives you a good feeling, makes you feel very proud that you competed very equally, if not better than most of them. You know, I didn't always enjoy some of them as teammates, and you enjoyed some more than others for different reasons. Patrick Tambay was just an absolute gentleman. You know, if he told you he did 2 clicks of rebound on the damper, you believed it, because, you know, he would not lie. And he once said to me, Derek, it was really nice to hear that, you know, you trusted me so well and you like me so much. Could I have trusted you? And I said, absolutely not. If you did, you were a fool.
Brilliant. Excellent. There is another teammate that is on that list, and I'm going to mention him very shortly. Firstly, you moved into the BTCC. Was that something that you always fancied doing, or was it just an opportunity presented itself?
Absolutely not. I hated my time in touring cars, because we were having a lot of problems in the businesses that I was running. The group was I was 15 hours a day keeping the business going. And then I'd turn up on a Friday night and try and be a racing driver against the great drivers like Menu, Cleland, Harvey, all those guys. And, you know, I wasn't prepared for it. So I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy front wheel drive. I didn't enjoy 300 horsepower. You know, I enjoyed 1,300 horsepower at Monza in a rocket ship. So I didn't prepare myself very well. And I regret a bit of it. I'm glad I won one lucky race.
Yeah, Knock Hill in the wet.
Yeah, Knock Hill in the wet. Yeah, just picked the right tires. But yeah, I mean, it was good racing. I don't know that I enjoyed it as much as I could have done and should have done. But anyway, we then started a team, Triple Eight, that's been amazing successful. And we're still running the V8s down in Australia with Triple Eight Australia. So yeah, It's been a big part of my life, but not the most enjoyable.
Right, fair enough. I've always wondered, how do you start a team? Because obviously I'm just a fan who set up a page and it's going all right, but I've got no idea how you go about setting up a team. Do you just do a deal with a manufacturer, or do you? It's always one of those things that's kind of baffled me a bit. I've never really
the first thing you got to do is have the desire to do it. Have the people around you. And I had Ian Harrison and Roland Dane that were unbelievable people to be a part of a team. We, at the same time, we found out that Vauxhall had enough with Malik, and they were looking for another team. I had a secret meeting with Mr. Nicholson at the Hilton off the M4 at Newbury. And that's where we signed.
That's just down the road from where I am right now.
Okay.
I'm in Reading, so yeah, I know it well.
Yeah, so we did the deal there and then, and we sold it on the fact that we had some really great people with Ian Harrison, John Gentry, and that sort of people. And we sold it on a super team. So we did a 3-year deal right there and then with Mike Nicholson and Vauxhall. I don't regret that. I really enjoyed being a team manager, and of course I drove for it as well, which wasn't too bad. Unfortunately, I had that Scottish guy called John Cleland, who was an absolute pain in the arse. No, I'm joking. Really, he was a great guy to be with. He really was.
No, brilliant. That actually brings me on to my next little point here. Not sure if John is tuning in, but this is getting recorded, and he said he's going to be watching the recording of it. He actually sent a message on Twitter earlier. I'm just going to read this out. This is word for word. He says, ask him about when we were teammates at Triple Eight Racing and going training in San Moritz, and apparently you almost killed him on some skis.
Well, I said to John, look, John, the one thing you're not is fit, and he really wasn't fit. And of course, I went to San Moritz cross country skiing all my life, from all the way through Formula One, and that it was the start of my training regime in January, February. So I convinced John to go there, and I have to say, can I swear on this or not?
Yeah, go for it. It's fine. It's after the watershed. It's fine.
He was fucking useless. He really was. He was probably the most unfit person I've ever seen. He had no balance, but when we took the skis off and went to the pub, he was great fun. He really was. One of the quickest drivers ever, for sure, in touring cars. I've got a lot of time for John. We had a bit of an on-off relationship at times, but we were competitors, team boss, the whole thing. So it was never an easy situation, but we kept in touch. He's a part of the BIDC. He runs garages like I do. And like I say, he was definitely one of the most unfit guys, uncoordinated, not interested, hated me every day he went out on those skis. He hated me so much. But we got him a bit fitter, maybe too fit, because he's bloody quick, that's for sure.
He was quick. So there you go, John. If you do watch this back, all Derek's words, not mine. I can't comment. I've got no idea. Just going to, again, wind down. This has been a long interview and it's been great. Just going to wind down a little bit. Since you've finished racing and not got involved much with the Triple Eight, you've obviously got, you're doing like race stewardship. You were out at the Nürburgring recently on official F1 duties. Obviously there was fog and rain and goodness knows what. How was that weekend? And also, what are your thoughts on the current crop of F1 drivers and the machinery and everything?
I started being the driver's steward when it first started. Jean rang me and asked me if I would like to start it off. When I think the first race was Budapest back 10, 12, 11 years ago. I can't remember. And I really enjoy it. It's developed massively. It's very technical now. We've got every piece of information you can have, from data, from throttle trace, from brakes, turn in. We have that live. We got all the interviews live. We got what they're saying to each other live. So we've got a lot of tools to try and judge it. We don't always get it right, for sure. People have their own opinion on certain decisions we've made. But we do the best job we can. It's pretty high pressured, but I love it. I absolutely love it. I prep for it, and I'm very professional in the way I handle it. The current crop of drivers, well, there's one driver that stands out head and shoulders. He's being caught up, I have to say, but Lewis Hamilton is just extraordinary what he's been doing his last few years. Some of these qualifying laps in race wins have been just out there. They're Senna-ish, they're Prost-ish, they're every driver you can imagine. He's up there with the greats, 100%. People treat him a bit like Marmite. They either like him or they don't like him. I've got no problem with that. I think we should all sit back and remember that we're watching at a time when a real true legend is winning races, and I really do, and that's how I think. But he's got a few undercards now that are right there with him. Max Verstappen, obviously, yes. Very, very close to him. Then you got people like Charles Leclerc, who is unbelievable. Lando Norris is exceptional. George Russell, exceptional. Yes. I mean, we're gonna hear of those young British drivers for a long time. They come through our young driver of the year program at the British Racing Drivers Club. So we've seen firsthand the kind of talent they are. Super guys. Even now, George, and is now his second year of Formula One. He, as a tribute to me or a thanks to me, he wears a little BIDC badge on his overalls, and he doesn't have to. And I think that's pretty special. But no, we've got a great crop of young drivers that's going to keep us really entertained for a long time. Lewis, just sit back and enjoy the moment. Don't criticize what he's doing or what he's wearing or what he does in between races. You know, that's what turns him on, and that's what makes him at times half a second quicker than anybody. And that's special.
I'm so glad you said that, because obviously, not so much on the Hard Compound page, but on other pages that we sort of follow and stuff. And two things that crop up. Lewis is only up there because he's in the best car, which doesn't explain why he beats Valtteri all the time. And I'm not going to swear, but the amount of times that I've seen George Russell is right, and it's like, well, no, he's clearly. I mean, I think that George Russell is getting more out of the Williams car than he's got any right to, especially last year when it wasn't particularly good. And I just think they're two terrific drivers. You could put them. Obviously, George needs some slightly better machinery. Nothing against Williams, of course. Brilliant team. But Lewis is just.
He's another one thing. Valtteri has won in everything he's ever done. Yeah. He is. If he was in any other team, he'd be winning races. He's a great driver. But he's come up against the greatest. You know, and that's difficult for anybody. We're seeing that with whoever they put into that Red Bull alongside Max. Yeah, he destroys them. He destroys them mentally. He destroys them physically. He destroys them with speed. So these guys are just exceptional, you know. And like I say, the two Brits that we just spoke about, George and Lando, they for sure, if they get the opportunity, they're going to be one of our sport's great drivers.
Yeah, excellent. No, I am very glad to hear you say that, because I've always thought that as well, and you know far more than I do. So, excellent. Just two or three little things just to finish up with. Three little fun questions. Of all your past teammates, who would you still like to go out for dinner with?
Patrick Tambay was good fun. He was a gentleman and always funny. Had an amazing way with the other kind of sex, which was always interesting to watch. Martin Brundle, I've got a lot of time for, and was really special. Eddie Cheever, yeah, I'd love to go back and have supper with him again. There's some I wouldn't do. Tio Fabi, you know, I can't be bothered. Bruno Giacomelli, I really can't be bothered. You know, because they didn't give anything back to the sport, and I like people that give something back to the sport.
Interesting you say that. Paul O'Neill obviously presents the British Touring Car Championship. He actually shared the post I put on Twitter, and he said that he absolutely loves you because you give back whenever you can. So that's
thank you, Paul.
Very important. Right, what we got here? Two last things. If you could own one car that you've driven, if you could take it home and own it, which one would it be?
Well, I'll be torn between the 91 sports car, the Jaguar, the XJR14. It was such a beautiful car. The Renault in '84 was special because it was just the first time with a manufacturer, and a great car as well. The Ross Brawn '89 car was good, was also good. But I think I'd rather have some of the shit boxes I've driven and crush them. I think I'd have more fun out of having them than I would out of having one of the best cars. Probably the Ross Brawn Jaguar XJR14. It was just unbelievable.
Brilliant. Someone's just said, if he says the '96 Vectra, I'm out.
No, yeah, I'd like the Vectra just so I can crush it.
No, there you go. I think you'll be happy with that. Okay. Very last thing. I've seen a couple of comments. They said, "Oh, is there any chance of a biography coming out? Because everyone's obviously loving all the stories you've said. Is there any chance of a biography?"
I'm over 2/3 of the way through it. David Tremaine is ghostwriting it for me. We were hoping to get it out before Christmas. It's not a book I'm writing to sell. It's a book I'm writing to tell some of the stories for my family. You know, I want my grandsons and to remember Uncle Stan and Dad and Lenser and Bill and a lot of people that were a big part of my life. I want them to remember them as fondly as I did, because, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now, who the hell was I, you know? So there's going to be some a book there, and there's going to be some funny stories in that book, let me tell you.
Excellent. That is going to be going on the Christmas list unless it gets bought out in February, in which case I'll buy it. No, I think we've been on for an hour and a half, which is actually the longest chat that we've had. Oh, someone just said, "Can we get a signed copy?" There you go. Someone's asked for that.
Yeah, but sure. But are they going to get a free one, or are they going to buy it, or what?
No, I don't know. I'm just going to keep my eye on that comment and see what happens.
No, I'm joking. The book won't come out before Christmas now. I don't want to rush it. I'll be honest with you, Richard.
No, sure.
I don't want to rush it. Like I say, it's a piece of history, and I want to make sure it's right.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. I mean, it's thank you so much for coming on, Derek. It's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you and hearing all the stories and the tales and what John Clennan's like and all that kind of thing. So it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and thank everybody for listening. And keep safe, keep happy, and just keep pushing.
Yeah, excellent. Here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. And we are announcing another interview tomorrow, everyone viewing. So stay tuned. But this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Derek. And I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Good night. Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.